Good afternoon. I always have a lot of friends here. Let me do a quick survey. Say, how many of you have been already using a Web AppBuilder? Well, pretty much most of them. That's good, because you are part of this 200,000 apps created, and since the Web AppBuilder has been released, and those apps are available on ArcGIS Online. I think every one of them, you are a part of it. And now there's two aspects of the Web AppBuilder. One is to create app, right? You create a lot of apps around ArcGIS Online, maybe a portal or some other area. Another is as a developers, what are you going to do about it? This session we're going to cover that aspect of our Web AppBuilder. So we started with how do you create apps, right? And web apps or whatever apps we're dealing with. Because we're developers, we want to create something. And here's usually what happened is that you have an idea, you want to solve some business problem, and you want to do something cool and fun. So you have ideas. Then you put those ideas together, start with small, and some features and functions. You create an app using JavaScript or whatever language you like. And over time, and there are more functions, features you come up with or people telling you to do. And you starting building these things getting bigger and bigger and more complicated, right? And you wire stuff together and become a very good, big application you're very proud of. And that's not stop usually. And you get a requirement from left and right. And just before you know, really you start have a monster in your hands. But just like everybody knows, once you spend a lot of time and some money doing it, and this is usually what you get, right? Well, that's not exactly what I want to do something more. So apps, that's usually as developers, you always run into that cycle, right? You get a requirement, you build the apps, then not satisfied, and then you're coming back again, get more features or functions. So that has to be changed, or if not changed already. And this is all about the Web AppBuilder all about. So what changed, right? The thinking behind we built this Web AppBuilder as a concept or technology, the product. First of all, we don't treat application app as the fixed asset. That's something you hold dearly. You keep adding it, you keep building it, right? It's like the computer or hardware. And it's not the case anymore. And the application is something disposable. Ideally, that you build something, use it, and dump it if you don't like it, or done with it, and you create another one. So that life cycle should be shorter. And also, application is not just something you created and used by your customers and users. You should have the feedback loop. Application should be something that you can use it to understand your customers better, your customers or users' behaviors better. So it's kind of like looping things, right? It's not just give the apps to users and you however you want to use it. And there's another concept actually. One of my friends Tapas enlightened me yesterday. He said, hey, the developers, with AppBuilder, you're not just plumber anymore. Just build everything from scratch. You're actually content creator. I think that's a good idea. That's really, I want to emphasize this. So application is the content. As a developers, you're actually getting more creative. You build the content. You're not the plumbers anymore. Just build everything, wire everything from the scratch. So that's why we have this builder, really. And as a developers, we don't take your job away. It's fun to build application. Rather, we want you to be more creative in a different way to build applications. So that's why we have this builder concept and a product. We build it. Just try to simply help you build applications. As a developers, and of course you can do more with besides just creating apps. So today, Gavin and I, we were going to cover the developer or customization or extension part of the Web AppBuilder. And we'll start with Gavin actually introduce you the developer aspect of Web AppBuilder. And then we'll dive into creating widgets. That's another development side of a Web AppBuilder. Then we cover a little bit theme also, involve development, involve coding. And then we introduce you the community, everybody here actually, how we can help each other and extend and further develop for Web AppBuilder. And if you have time, we're going to do Q&A and some other talks if we have. So let's start with the introduction. Gavin.
Cool, thanks. Perfect. So Web AppBuilder is just one component of the many ways that Esri is allowing us as developers to build web apps. The idea here is that for many applications, a configurable app or builder that may have some slight customization may solve your problem. That may be the best solution for what you need to build. You can write widgets and scripts that go into either the configurable apps or builders to customize them. And if you do end up needing something more complex, you can take some of that same scripts that you're writing, because they're all using the JavaScript API, you can take some of that code and move it even into a custom JavaScript API app if you wanted to. So the idea of AppBuilder is right here. It's basically you take a GUI builder, graphical user interface for your users to be able to build apps. They're combining widgets and themes. There are a lot of them out of the box, but you might build a custom one for them to use as well as the STEM app, which is kind of the core application that Esri is providing with Web AppBuilder. And you combine that all with a configuration file. So as you're building it, Web AppBuilder is generating a configuration file that's pointing at those widgets, that's pointing at the theme that you chose. And it's all wrapped by the STEM app. And that gives you an app. And that gives you that's a really simple way to build an app, like Moxie was just talking about, that's really easy to generate, and it's even throwaway. Like you can create many at a time if you need to. So talking about that customization, what can we customize? Well, the main places we can customize in Web AppBuilder are the widgets and themes. So there are a few things about these. Widgets are executed at runtime. They should be self-sufficient, so you should be able to take your widget and package it up and send it to a friend or send it to a colleague, and they should be able to open it up in their own Web AppBuilder. It does generally run in a container, and it uses the programming framework of the container, where a theme is similar in some respects and different in some respects. It's applied at runtime. It needs a container as well. And it should also be self-sufficient. So like a widget, I can send my theme over to someone else, or I can run it on a different server, and it should work fine. And it also has the programming framework of the container. So let's jump into Web AppBuilder here. Actually, I'm going to switch over to ArcGIS Online to get started. So this is a map of the USA recycling habits. Specifically, it's a map showing the potential for the demand for recycling service in an area. I think it's really interesting to see kind of which areas have a lot of demand for recycling service. And so for this example, or for my examples throughout the rest of the session, let's say I'm on a research team and I want to make an app available to my team members to help us make decisions on recycling policies. So I'd like to choose a few tools to give to my team members that will help them make decisions better. So that's that's my task for today. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got this map, I've already built it. I'm going to go ahead and create an app. So I'm going to click Share here and create a web app. And here, I think we've all seen this, but these are all the configurable apps that you might start with if you have a specific workflow. But in this case, I know exactly what tools I want to give to my team members, so I'm going to actually create a web app with my Web AppBuilder. So I'm going to give this a name and get started. So as Web AppBuilder opens up here, if you haven't used it in a while, you'll notice since last year we've done a lot of improvements. The builder looks a lot sleeker, it looks a lot nicer, and there are a lot of widget enhancements that we've been doing over the past year. But just stepping through the builder here, you can select some themes. There's about 6 or 8 themes included, like the Launchpad theme I can switch, and that puts my widgets at the bottom. Or the foldable theme where I can put widgets at the top left or the top right. With your theme, you can style it. You can choose a color, or you can, what's recently new is that you can choose a custom color with a custom hex code, which is really nice. For this app, I'm gonna leave that custom hex code because it kind of goes with my data, so that's nice. And of course, there's layouts. So layouts are kind of, inside a theme, there's options that you can have different types of layouts. And Moxie will be talking about themes a little bit later on. So going through the builder, the map tab here, we can choose our map. Obviously, we started from a web map, so we don't have to choose that in this case. And the widgets tab is where most people spend a lot of their time choosing what widgets they want to include in our app. So in our example here, I want to allow my team to draw on this map because they're going to want to mark it up. So I'm going to include the draw tool. I have a few settings when you are adding a widget. It asks you some questions about how you want to enable the functionality of this widget. In my case, I don't want to enable nautical miles, so I'm going to remove that. And so my widget over on the preview side over here immediately shows there. I'm also going to allow my team to print, so I'm going to add that widget real quickly. And the last but not least, the attributes tab. This is where you can set the title, you can set the logo. I'm going to choose a logo here, a recycling logo, and you can change a few other aspects of the web app. So now I've got a web app, I can launch it, and it's pretty much good to go, right? You can share this web app using the ArcGIS Online sharing schema, and you could send out this URL if you wanted to. But in my case, my IT director wants us to host this internally. So I want to actually download this and host this on our own web server. So how do I do that? Well, I can switch over to my content here, and we can find that this web app that I just created, if I click into the item details on it, we'll see that there's a download button. And I can download that. And what that's going to do is it's going to download a zip of all the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript of the app that I just created, which is really cool because I can deploy that wherever I want, either on my own server or send it to someone else or what have you. So in this case, I've got the zip. I've already done this before this talk, and I'm hosting the app. If you look at the top of my screen, I'm actually hosting this on IIS on my machine, and we can see the app that I just created. So we can see the tools, like the draw tool. So, my team might point out what cities we want to start up recycling programs, as well as, printing, so we can export what I just drew to a PDF. So that's really cool. But one additional thing that we might want to do is kind of start to involve some custom code, right? So I talked to my team, and we figured out that we're going to need to build a custom widget because of our workflow. So for custom code, we're going to need Developer Edition. So for Developer Edition of Web AppBuilder, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is go out to the Esri documentation, developers.arcgis.com. You go find the Web AppBuilder page, you download the zip, and you open up, you unzip those files, run startup.bat, and then you'll have Developer Edition running. I've already got that running here, and this is what Web AppBuilder Developer Edition looks like. So since I already built my app in ArcGIS Online, I want to start using custom code, I want to bring that app that I already built over into Developer Edition. Well, we make that really easy, and it's a really nice process. So I can just hit import, and I have a couple options here. I can actually import from my account, which that's actually going to go out to my ArcGIS Online account and show me all the apps that I have. And here's that Recycle Potential app that I just created. So I can import it like that. I can also import from my computer. So if one of my colleagues downloaded an app or something, I can do that. So I'm actually going to, of course, refresh the page here. Of course, live demos never work, right? So I'm going to run Web AppBuilder Developer Edition again here. And so that's going to import. So what that's actually doing, Developer Edition is actually going through those files, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It's looking at that config file, and it's going to load that up. So I can actually open that up in the builder interface of Web AppBuilder. So let me go ahead and go into that app that was just imported. So I think this is one of the coolest things about Web AppBuilder, the online versus the Developer Edition. Here you can see that now I'm running Developer Edition on my local machine, but it basically looks exactly the same as what we had out on ArcGIS Online. There are small differences, like you just saw. There's a list of apps, and you can do a few other things, like you can actually customize the loading screen on the Developer Edition. So let's do that real quick. Let me add a background image of some recycling logos, and maybe something that looks like that. And let me launch my app and refresh. So now we've got Developer Edition running, and I've got the app running in Developer Edition. So maybe I want to start actually customizing my app and taking advantage of the fact that I'm using Developer Edition. So let's include a third-party widget. So there's a lot of ways to get custom widgets. So you can either download one from online. We have a great community out there, especially on GeoNet. I'm going to talk about that later. You can get widgets from your colleagues, or you can write your own. So in this case, I actually already downloaded a widget out from GeoNet, and I went into my Web AppBuilder Developer Edition folder structure. And if you go into Client, STEM App, and Widgets, all I did was downloaded that zip and dropped my widget in here. That automatically makes it available in Developer Edition. So if I go to my widgets now, and maybe I want to add a third widget, here I added this enhanced bookmark widget, and this is one of Robert Scheitlin's widgets from GeoNet. I think a lot of you might be aware, and I don't know if he's here. I haven't seen him today yet. But this widget is basically the bookmark widget, but a few more functionality things, like you can store your bookmarks in folders, for example, and you can have preset bookmarks like this. So it's a nice little widget that I just downloaded from GeoNet, and it was really easy to use. So if I save that and I run it, I can see it working here, and I can kind of save. Maybe I say San Fran, and I can add the bookmark there, and I can go to a different extent and come back to where I was. So so that's cool, right? We've already customized my Web AppBuilder app, and we haven't even written any custom code yet. But we've done a lot of customizations, so that's great. But let's get into what we might actually want to do with some custom development. So creating a custom widget uses the same skills that you're already using when you're building JavaScript applications with the JavaScript API. So on the right here, I have an example of what maybe your custom app, a simple custom one-page app might look like, right? You have some styles at the top. You might have some JavaScript code, and you'll have some HTML markup maybe at the bottom. I think we're all probably used to a page like this. or maybe something more complex. Well, with Web AppBuilder, as you're building widgets, we're taking those exact same concepts, and this is kind of how they map to Web AppBuilder widgets. So basically, we separate out the CSS, the JavaScript, and the HTML into separate files. And in this case, it says my widget, but that would just be your widget name. And Web AppBuilder knows to kind of look for those files, and it automatically can pulls up those files to load your widget. So that's kind of the general structure. So in the widget.js file, you'll be creating Dojo modules that inherit from base widget. So, and base widget is provided from the JAMU library. So that's kind of what you're getting with the kind of the underlying structure of Web AppBuilder that we're providing to you. So this is similar how plain Dojo widgets inherit from digit.widgetBase. So if you're familiar with JavaScript API widgets, typically you'll inherit from that, and from that you'll get a lot of lifecycle functions like post create, like startup, like all these different things. So similarly, base widget gives us some lifecycle functions as well. So for example, on open or on close. So I can wire up my custom widget to run a block of code when my widget opens or when I close. So that's a really good thing to do, for example, when you're working with layers, and maybe you might want to turn a layer on and when the widget opens, or turn it off when it closes, to kind of clean up after your widget. So that's one good way to use those lifecycle functions. So base widget, in addition to those lifecycle functions that I was just talking about, provides you with a lot. It gives you access to the app properties, like the name, the localization, etc. It provides you with the widgets config. It provides you with an instance of the map object. So if you're used to the JavaScript API, you can access the map really easily. It's just this.map. It gives you the widget state. It gives you events. It gives cross-widget communication now that we've just implemented that over the past year. So it gives you a lot. So what is your job? Well, your job as a developer is to take all of that stuff that we're giving you, the events, the map object, and do what you need to do with your own business logic and workflows. And maybe you also define out some settings, and maybe if you need to do some translation, we've got NLS built in, so you can make sure that is translated appropriately for all of your colleagues or your customers, and build a widget that kind of works for you. So the idea here is that base widget is giving you a lot, and you just have to do whatever's specific to your workflow, your job, etc. So the structure of Web AppBuilder is quite opinionated, and by that I mean it's another way of saying Web AppBuilder expects certain files to be in certain places, and that's intentional by the team, the Web AppBuilder team, and it actually saves you a lot of time, because you might be familiar with other paradigms where you have all these files and you need to tell your library where to find the files. Well, Web AppBuilder just expects certain files to be in those locations. So typically, and kind of at the bottom here, typically your widget will always have to have a manifest.json file. That's just a straight JSON file that tells Web AppBuilder about your widget and what kind of functionality your widget has. So does it have translations? Does your widget provide a settings file? All that stuff, that's in the manifest.json file. It also has you also must have a widget.js file. That's the entry point of where Web AppBuilder starts your widget from. And then everything else here is, this is where those files would be, but they're optional, but they're very common. So for example, widget.html will be your HTML template. The CSS and images folder are where you store your resources. The NLS folder is where you would have your translations. And the setting folder is a special folder. That's where Web AppBuilder will automatically look to find where your setting module is. So that's that box that pops up after you add the widget to an app. That's basically like you're basically defining a mini widget right there, and you're telling Web AppBuilder how to draw the user interface so that your users can properly set the settings. So this is, again, the general structure of your widget. So now I'm going to do kind of a final demo of what you might do if you wanted to build a widget from scratch. So you can start from a variety of methods. You can either, you could start from total scratch and just go through our documentation and build out all those files that you just saw manually. But that's a lot of work. With Web AppBuilder Developer Edition, there's also a sample widgets folder that provides a lot of kind of starter widgets, and you can start by copying and pasting one of those. You can also start by copying and pasting a existing widget. So all of the out-of-the-box widgets come with Web AppBuilder. And if you want to say, I want to build a widget that is very similar to the editor widget but does X, Y, and Z in addition, you can actually start there. And there's also even another way you can use what's called a yeoman generator. We have published out on the Esri GitHub page a tool that basically you answer some questions and it'll automatically generate all the files for you. I'm going to be talking about that yeoman generator later today in the same room at 5:30. We're going to kind of take a deep dive into that and some more advanced Web AppBuilder topics. So if you're interested in that, come back later. So staying with our theme, let's say our team has given us the task of creating a widget that kicks off a recycling policy review for a county. So we want to build a widget that allows the user to go into clicking mode, and then the user would click on the map, and that will basically send that location out to, say, a third-party business system that maybe is specific to my company. And so how would we build that? So switching over to Chrome here. So I've started with a sample widget to get us started here. You can see on the right-hand side, I've called it Recycle Process Widget. It's just empty right now. You'll see I'm running it in the Web App Viewer, page. So this is a powerful tool for development that you can basically load up a config file via a query parameter, and it allows you to easily develop quickly a single widget. So I'm kind of focused on this single widget. I'm not having to deal with my entire app right now. So I've got that pulled up here. So let's jump into the code for this widget. So I've got my code for my widget pulled up right here. And can you all see this in the back? Are we good? Okay. So let's jump into a few of these files. So the config.json file I talked about earlier. So basically this is just a JSON file that defines out what settings we want to allow the user to change when they're setting up the widget. So in this case, I've added a JSON structure here, and it has a single property called third-party system URL. This is just totally made up. And it's pointing out to a URL. So this is where, when we click on the map, we're going to send the location of where we clicked out to this REST endpoint. And so you can see it's pretty simple, just a config file. You could have this could be much more complex. You could have many different config settings. So next we're going to get into the widget.js file. So that's the second required file that I was talking about. So this is kind of what came over with my sample file, and what I haven't shown you about my web map yet. If I switch back over to my web map, if I have it open, I've closed it. So basically, in this web map, there's also a second layer, and it's of some points of where we already have recycling programs going. So basically, when I open up my widget, I want to show that additional layer to the user so that they can be most informed, right? So when I'm choosing a place to start a new recycling program, I want that person to be informed of where the other current recycling programs are. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing here. So first I want to actually grab a reference to that layer. So I'm going to do that in the post create. So the post create is one of those lifecycle functions. It's basically code that runs when the widget starts up. So I'm going to go and get my code over here. So I'm going to put in one line of code, and I'm going to be assigning a variable, this.projects layer, and I'm going to use this.map. So calling back to what I was talking about earlier, I just have access to this.map because I'm extending from Jimu/base widget. I have access to that, and that's just the plain old JavaScript API map object. So I can do any function off of that I would in a custom widget. So I'm calling .get, the get layer function in this case, and I'm passing the layer ID. So I'll save that, and now I've got a reference to that layer. So like I was saying, I want to show that layer when the widget opens, and I want to hide that layer when the widget closes. So that should be pretty simple. I've already got the lifecycle function on open, and all I have to do is basically say this.projects layer and .show. And to clean up after myself on close, it'll be very similar. It'll just be .hide. So if I save out that widget and I refresh the map here, sorry, refresh the app. So right now we have our base, we have our web map, and when I click on my widget, now we can see that that points layer has turned on, so it's showing that basically we already have recycling programs in Denver, Atlanta, Orlando, and we want to allow the user to click on the map to create a new one. So this just kind of shows you how we can add additional context for the user through those lifecycle methods. So let's get into actually adding some UI. So where do we deal with the UI? That's in our HTML file, widget.html file to be exact. So let me copy some code here. So here's some basic markup of some HTML. Basically, I have a single div, and I've got a single button in here. Now, there's a lot going on right here if you're not too familiar with Dojo, so I'll kind of go through it slowly. Basically, we have a attach event, so we're saying when the person clicks on this button, when the person does an action, and in this case I'm saying I want a click event here, it's going to call the button click event handler function that's back in my widget.js file. So we're going to define that later. So we'll move on from that for a second. My label for my button, if you're familiar with HTML, whatever's between the two button tags, that's what's going to be the label. I don't have just a string there. I have a template tag, and that's including some NLS stuff, or in other words, I'm enabling a translated string right there. So when I'm calling nls.addLocation, basically I'm saying I want to go to my translations file and I want to include the string that I have for addLocation. So I'll save that, and let's explore how the translations work for custom widgets. So all of our translations files are always in the NLS folder. So you can see here in the example widget that I pulled up, I've already got a strings.js file, but it's empty. So all I have to do is utilize that addLocation variable that I had created over here, and I have to add it to my translations. So by default, or for me, because I'm currently in an English locale, this will be the English translation or my default translation. So I'm just going to say addLocation. So this is just a simple, lookup of this object to say for addLocation, it's going to replace that string with that. And maybe I want to support another language. So let's say I want to support Spanish. So I'm going to include ES is equal to true right down here. So that's basically telling Web AppBuilder and telling the Dojo NLS system that we want to include a Spanish translation. So go look for it if we need to. When I add that in, it's going to know to look in a folder called ES. So I need to create that. And similarly to this strings.js file, I'm going to have another strings.js file. And so in here is where I'm going to put my Spanish translations. So it's a very similar process to the previous strings.js. But for this time where I have addLocation instead of the English translation, I've got the Spanish translation here. So I'll save that. So now we should have all of our translation stuff all set up appropriately. So I'll close some of those files. And let's go back to our button event. So remember, we're basically telling Web AppBuilder when someone clicks on this button, I want to call a function. So I'm going to go back to my widget.js file and actually define out this function. And I've got this already created here. All right, so this is a decent amount of code, but let's just kind of explain it. So basically, when my user clicks that button, it's going to launch this, this function, and specifically these few lines of code. And specifically what I want to happen when the user clicks the button is I want to set up a listener so that when the person clicks the map, I'm going to be able to run some code after the person clicks that map. So going back to before, I'm just using the this.map object that's provided, that's basically from the JavaScript API. And I can set a click event on it. And when I click on the map, it's going to run my code in here. So for now, I'm just logging that out, and I'm doing an alert. What am I alerting out? Well, for now, I'm just doing the X and Y map point of where I clicked, as well as I'm using this.config. So that's new, right? So this.config is another one of those variables that base widget provides you. Similar to this.map, this.config is the config object of my current Web AppBuilder widget. So I'm also echoing out this.config.thirdparty-system URL. That's, if you remember our config.json, that was my setting that I had set. So I'm going to save that out, and I think that's all. So let's go over to our application and run this. So I'm going to open my widget. I've still got the points showing up on my map, and now we've got our button here. So first, let's make sure that translation is working. So in this case, I've got add location. But if I open this page over in Firefox, where I have Firefox set to a Spanish locale, you'll see that this is all translated already, like the login page was translated already. And if I open up my widget, we'll see that that button is translated as well, which is really nice. So you can see that just adding a little bit of code for translation, that all works really well. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely take advantage of that. So that was the translation. Let's make sure that our click is working. So when I click on this button, it's enabling a click listener on the map. And this is where I want my users to kind of click a city where they want to set up a recycling program. So maybe we want to start one up in Kansas City. And we'll see that I had my alert set, which is good. And I'm seeing the X and Y location of where I clicked. In this case, it's in Web Mercator, but you could change that to lat long if your system needed that. And it's showing my configuration value, which is great. So that's kind of the widget in general, but I guess the one last thing to show is the settings page. So we do have a settings page, and since settings are a little bit more complex, I've already got most of this written out. But I can step through this real quick. So creating a settings page is basically putting a UI over that config.json file that we created. So if you remember, I created a config.json file, and I created the third-party system URL variable. So in setting.js, I'm telling Web AppBuilder how to populate the form and how to save out that form out to config.json. So to dig deeper into that, basically, this setConfig function is what Web AppBuilder calls when it's loading up the config. So we're saying that, okay, we want to place into our input value whatever's in config.thirdparty-system URL. And then when the person actually clicks save on the settings page, we need to tell Web AppBuilder how to save that out to config.json again. So basically, we're just returning a simple object similar to our config.json, and we're setting third-party system URL to this.text node, which is our input value. If I switch over to our HTML file, it's our input value for our form. So it's really as simple as that. For settings, you can do translations and CSS as well, but that's about it. So if I switch over to my developer edition of Web AppBuilder again, I've got this widget in here. So if I go to my recycle project, I click OK. So we'll see here that this is the form that I have in my settings.html file. It's asking me for my third-party report submit URL. And it automatically populates the value that I have in my original config file. But I could change this right for this particular instance of the widget that I'm using. And if I click OK, I open up my widget, I add a location, and I click that. We see that this time, instead of showing that default setting, it's changed to HTTP dev, which is the setting that I just set. So that's using settings. So that's about it. So now, so to kind of summarize there, I know I went through a lot of code, but basically we started with a sample app. We added our config. We added some HTML and JavaScript to kind of make that all work together. And we tested it in the web config viewer. And we made a basic app from nothing. Or sorry, we made a basic widget from nothing. And you can imagine how you can take these same concepts and just build it to whatever workflow that you guys need to do. So now I'm going to throw it back over to Moxie, and he's going to talk about similar concepts, but with themes.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. Okay, so pretty much Gavin covered even though it's very short of time, I covered most aspect of actually widget development. Now, let's go back to the theme. You know, we mentioned earlier, there's two aspects of the extension and the customization. One is widget, one is theme. And from here, this is my version of developer's edition. I'm running on a Mac, actually. Well, just, you know, it's very similar. It doesn't matter where you're running. And because as developer, just you know that we're behind the scene, we're using Node.js actually running behind manage those apps and import all that stuff. So it really doesn't matter you're running on Windows or Mac, it's all the same. So I have my version running, and you can see here, out of box, we provided some themes, right? And themes generally including styles and the layout. So that's what we're going to do. But we can only do so much, give you so many themes. And we really encourage actually you come up your own theme, just like you learn how to develop the widgets, you come up your own widgets and share with the communities. So let me go back to my slides. Okay, so we need a little bit of style and personality when we develop application. And to me, it's quite important actually. You need to come up with application. It's beautiful and has a little bit of personality, not just cookie cutter and just application out of a box. So because the theme really is you, right? You have your identity, you have your branding, you have your personalities. And everybody should come up your own apps represent yourself, your organizations. And as a theme, so what exactly is the theme? And we know we're familiar with application with the skin, sometimes call it, or sometimes they call it theme as well, maybe just the look and feel and the color. In Web AppBuilder, the context, the theme has few things, right? And usually they have some regular used element, like the front controller on top of the application. You can put a widget to it. Those usually is part of the theme. And also, when you configure application, you have predefined the location where the configurator can put widgets to it. That predefined location also part of the theme. And another aspect of it is that you recognize that when Gavin create the widget, and from scratch, actually, there's empty panel, right? There's nothing there, there's no business logic, but there's a panel. That's also a part of the theme, because the panel usually is something to do with the user experience, the interactive, minimize, enlarge. It's not a whole lot to do with the business logic. That's why we put those into part of the theme. And yeah, this is what I talked about it, and this is very typical in the application. On top of you have the header. You can put you can change that, the branding, your name, application, or change your logo. It's all part of the theme. And also you will have placeholder on top of your application so that you can have some shortcut as the functionality. And then you have the panel to hold your widgets content. And when we design the Web AppBuilder, and there's one fundamental kind of a concept idea is to make your job easier. That's why you can see when you develop the widget, right? You need to follow a lot of conventions, some naming standards, or we rather call it conventions, right? As long as you follow those names or those photo structures, things will be a lot easier. Similar to here, and we put a panel as part of a theme. The reason behind it is that we don't want a developer to deal with all those interactive color or those how do you actually enlarge, how do you move this component around. Rather, we want to focus on actually the meat part of it, the coding to solve your business problem. So we put the panel also as part of the theme. In the theme convention, since Gavin already covered the web widget development, is almost identical as the widget development and the theme structure. So you probably already get the idea that as long as you follow this convention, this design concept is called developing over convention. As long as you follow the convention, the folder structure, the naming convention, and your job will be a lot easier. And also you can package this to share with others. So when you developing a theme, you pretty much generate the similar folder structures. So I'll show you in the code actually. So what I'm going to show you is that I'll create my own theme. Right? This is summer. I want this theme has this orange-ish color, and I scratched this on my napkin probably. It's like I want a button of this screen has some functionality, widgets, and there's a map. And this is my idea of a theme, so let's make it happen. And also, as a developer, it always has your favorite editor. In my case, I use TextMate. So now, I mentioned earlier that with the theme, you're going to have your sets of folder structure, right? But you can start with something simple. And initially, I want to have this kind of stuff in there. I have a manifest, right? This is the most important one. The manifest file is the one to tell the Web AppBuilder what exactly everything you put together for the theme. So you can see here you have a name and for labels, and you can see here within the theme what panels included, and the styles. In our case, I want to change that to be the orange color. So my default style would be this orange color. And I have two different styles. One is just default, I call it. And another one is green. Also have different layout. And this is pretty much it. So with this, you already put your idea in there. Say which kind of panel I have, which kind of style color I have, and also what layouts I want to put in there. This is your mastermind, the piece of work actually just all down here. Now, once you have that, you probably want to do some design works. This is where actually separate a little bit from theme development and widget development. Here, really, you want to involve designers sometimes, because as a developer, you may not have the best look application developed. But as a designer, you can give the work. Say, hey, I want to come up some nice looking user interface. They can give you those CSS. You can give you some graphic works. In my case, I have my own sets of image created maybe by designer, and also I have my style. And in the style is also very similar. So in each of the folder, it has only one file. It's called a style. So, and this file contains what you want to put in there. Usually it's different colors or designed for your theme. I'm going to copy this one to the default one. The default one is the one I want to add to make an orange color. And I'll change the color to the orangey one. Okay. So assume you have all this look and feel and design initial work down. You haven't done anything else yet, right? And so how do you actually try out? This is how it works. Let me open up the folder structure. And it's very similar to theme development, a widget development. You can just copy the whole thing and put it into your Web AppBuilder environment. In this case, it's similar. You can see the folder structure. This widget area, that's where you put your custom widget. And there's a theme folder. And all those out-of-box themes are here. Now I just need to copy my here. So it's called my theme. So once you've done that, you can actually do a little bit of evaluation. Let me actually refresh the developer edition. I can try out by create a new app to look at the theme. Okay. So you can see here, I have a new theme there. This is my artwork. And this theme really doesn't whole lot really just showing up here. And it didn't work. Because right now, I only just try to put in there to show actually the artwork is okay. It's out here. Let me just do another refresh. Okay. Now to further develop that, and as I mentioned earlier, so once you have the style, the color, the artwork, and there's other aspect really you want to start to deal with. And another idea is called the layout. So what exactly is layout? Layout essentially is where you're going to put those widgets on your default application. Just once you pick the theme, what's already in there, what's already on this screen. Right? And in the layout actually is done by change this configuration file. Like Gavin already covered, every application has the config.json file. This file contains everything you have, like what the panel you used, what widget has been included, configured into this application. Right? And this one is also using exact the same file. Difference is they actually put some placeholder like here. And they tell you, say, hey, well, I'm going to have using this panel. And the panel has some position. And there we're going to have a map. And the map going to put out here. And also, we include some widgets, this all-about widget, into this theme. That's why once you use the theme, you don't have to add every widget to it. And the theme designer already think about, say, hey, by using this theme, you already have some widgets pre-configured. And this is a layout. Now, also, you can recognize there's a similar folders. One is called the panel, one is widget. So why we have widgets inside a theme? Now, as I mentioned earlier, you want to actually create a theme, self-sufficient, and the whole thing you can package and share with others, right? And we actually, when we design this, we're thinking about it, or we can, buy a reference, or we want to give you a whole package. People can just install it, works. Now, remember, my design concept is makes your job easier. This is number one thing to evaluate, to make the decision to help. Now, what is easier is you unzip, copy to folder, works, right? So that's why when you design the theme, sometimes you might add some widgets into this panel, into this theme area. And that's why when people starting build application using the theme, everything will be included. The same goes as panel. Now, this also panel development involve coding. I won't show you because it's exactly the same as the widget development. Now, panel, the idea is the same. We want to take some UX aspect of this application out of a widget developer's hand, right? So you can see the whole Web AppBuilder design, there's a lot of separation we built into it. We want to separate the designer, we want to separate the theme developer, we want to separate actually developer to solve business problem. Right? In this case, and once you have a panel, the panel has to be reused. Then when you start developing the widget, you don't want to deal with, okay, how my widget going to look like as a window, how I want to make my widget can move around. Those will be solved by panel, by theme developers. And the panel development is almost identical as your developed widgets, because we have the base widget panel class defined, and it has this life cycle very similar. So you just inherit the base widget panel, then you deal with the window frame. You want to actually can make this minimizable and draggable, and all that you can actually just like develop your regular Windows application and to develop your panel. Then you package your panel as part of the theme. So once you've done that, and I'm going to actually get the whole theme to my environment. Again, when you deploy your theme, is similar to deploy your widget. You can, in the developing environment, you just copy it into the theme folder. And refresh your environment and create a new app. Behind the scene, why I want to create a new app? Okay, there's a few things you probably want to know as developers. Every time you create an app, like I'm doing now, and once I click a theme, and behind the scene, we actually do a lot of packaging. We copy this application like Gavin showed you, and the widgets, and the theme, and the same apps, we put them together and also copy it to another directory, another folder. And then you have everything in there. That's why when you say, hey, I'm ready for the application, I can download the whole thing, because it's already packaged for you. So there's a lot of, all those little things is used for trying to make your deployment and everything easier. So now we have the theme, right? And the theme has two colors, greens and orange color. And on this button area, I already include some widgets put in there so you can start using it. And that's pretty much your way of creating a theme. And to summarize that, first of all, there's a separation there. We want you to have your designer or whoever good at the colors to design this. This involves actually design the look and feel and what should be on your screen, where you want to put a widget, right? It also has some customization and coding works, like you develop this some type of panels to hold your widget, right? And rather than that, really it's just similar as the widget development. You package everything and put it into a directory, then you have a new theme. Okay, let's back to here. Oh, we're running out of time. Let's just go back here.
Yeah, so we've only got a few more minutes here, but we'll run through community and then the road ahead. So we'll have these slides on in the Esri presentations area, but if you would need more information on what Moxie and I are talking about, here are the documentation links. or just Google ArcGIS Web App Builder and make sure you look at either Developer Edition or ArcGIS Online documentation. GeoNet is a really great place. How many of you are already on GeoNet? Okay, a good number of you. Tons of people are posting their own widgets, posting their own custom themes, asking questions, answering questions. If you have a cool theme idea you want, you can post it up here. So there are 2 links. I know they're really long, but just Google GeoNet and Web App Builder, and those will come up. It's a great community out there. Esri offers a really good class with Web App Builder, training.esri.com. Just search for Web App Builder. There's a couple of them. Creating web applications using templates and Web App Builder is really good. And there are other great places out on the web too. We can all use Google, but on GitHub, a lot of people are posting their Web App Builder widgets. The solutions team here is the first link that are posting some good widgets. There's stuff out on code sharing. There's other stuff on GitHub. There's a few links there. And there's an awesome ArcGIS project out on GitHub as well that's documenting a lot of stuff with ArcGIS. And there's a great page on Web App Builder there. Moxie?
Yeah, Kyle. Okay, real quick, I covered what's coming. Basically, Web App Builder will continue to help your job to make it easier to create application. Right? And another aspect that I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I didn't say it clear, is that the app also has a life cycle. Because we talked about the feedback loops, right? We're not just want to create an app and dump it and done with it. So the app has a life cycle. And the life cycle involves actually you design your app, deploy your apps, you test your app with your users, you deploy it to the users, you're getting feedback, and coming back and reconfigure the app. And this loop actually is application's life cycle. We want to give you a way to actually manage the application's life cycle. It's not just give you tools to create app. That's down the road is coming. So we're going to transition the tool you have right now, which is already good, but into a system. The system will help you not only just create app, but also help you to the next phase of the apps, the other lifecycle phase. Right? So in the sense that the tool itself is not going to be the center point anymore. Rather, your application will be the central point. And surrounding the application, we're going to have a builder as usual. We're going to have other elements to help you manage your application lifecycle, so that not only you can more efficiently to build application, but also can use an application to understand the users, getting feedbacks to optimize your application creation experience. So that's what we're actually working on. Other than that, thank you.